Hey, everybody. It is Thursday, November 14th. You're listening to the Mo News Podcast. I'm Moshe Mununu.
And I'm Jill Wagner. This is the place where we bring you just the facts.
And we read all the news and read between the lines so you don't have to. First, want to note that today, November 14th, is World Diabetes Day. It's a day of awareness. You can wear blue to support all those who suffer from diabetes. We should note, Jill, the numbers continue to increase here in America. 1 in 6 Americans are diagnosed with diabetes.
All right, Moshe, always good to raise awareness about it. And now to the news, and yet another crazy day for news headlines. The political headlines are coming fast and furious. Trump makes more picks for his cabinet and administration. Some, like Matt Gaetz for Attorney General, extremely controversial.
And leading to questions among Republicans on Capitol Hill now, Jill, as to whether all of Trump's picks will get through Senate confirmation.
And others like Marco Rubio to lead the State Department, less controversial.
It'll be smooth sailing for Marco.
And he's back. Donald Trump returns to the White House to meet with current President Biden. How did the meeting go? And why didn't Melania join him? Plus, about a week after the election, Republicans will officially retain their majority in the House of Representatives. Over in the Senate, Republicans elect John Thune as their next Senate Majority Leader.
We'll tell you who he is and what you should know about him.
In other news, a CIA official has been charged with leaking classified documents about Israel's plan to counterstrike Iran. And remember Jack Teixeira, he's the one who leaked classified documents on Discord. He has been sentenced to more than a decade behind bars. In economic news, inflation rose in October, what that means for the Fed's plan to cut interest rates. And standing desks may be all the rage, but are they actually bad for your health?
This is like wine and coffee. It's good for you, it's bad for you, it's good for you. We'll tell you the latest.
And People Magazine's Sexiest Man Alive is John Krasinski. And Moshe, even he says he was surprised.
Jill, in recent years, people like Patrick Dempsey, Chris Evans, not a surprise. Krasinski is like, oh, me?
Plus, Moshe has on this day in history.
Jill, Apollo 11, the first mission to land on the moon, gets all the attention. So does Apollo 13. Today, we'll tell you about Apollo 12.
Okay, let's start with more news coming out of Washington as President-elect Donald Trump continues to announce his cabinet picks and other high-level administration officials. First up, Trump surprised Washington and the country with his latest cabinet choices on Wednesday, tapping firebrand Republican Representative Matt Gaetz of Florida to serve as his attorney general. Trump writing on his Truth Social platform, few issues in America are more important than ending the partisan weaponization of our justice system. Matt will end weaponized government, protect our borders, dismantle criminal organizations, and restore Americans' badly shattered faith and confidence in the Justice Department. Gaetz said in a post on X that it would, quote, be an honor to serve in the role. Moshe, this pick was shocking even to Trump loyalists on Capitol Hill. Gaetz is still currently under investigation by the House Ethics Committee for sexual misconduct. The bipartisan committee looking into it made a rare statement in June that said some of the allegations against Gaetz, quote, merit continued review. In response to his nomination, Moshe, NBC News reporter Ken Delanian says that reaction from within the Justice Department is, quote, shock and horror. Another reporter said that the, quote, vibe on the Hill is WTF.
Jill, as we record this, we're just a couple hours removed from the announcement, still shockwaves in Washington. Some wondering whether this is just an attempt to get as many people as possible at the Justice Department to resign before Gaetz can take over. But Jill, let's go through this because I was talking to Republicans on Capitol Hill in recent days who said, for the most part, they've been happy with President Trump's picks, while, some come from more of the far right, the Make America Great Again wing of the party. They've been fine with it, especially in recent days as he nominated people like Marco Rubio for Secretary of State. The default for the Senate is the president is entitled to pick who they want in the cabinet. The Senate's role is to determine whether someone is appropriate, what they call advise and consent. So historically speaking, presidents get most of their picks, but even when their own party runs the Senate, they don't get all their picks. And so I can remember about 20 years ago, there was a woman named Harriet Miers, who was George W. Bush's lawyer in the White House. He nominated her for the Supreme Court. Republicans controlled the Senate at that point and said, no. She is not going to be the next Supreme Court justice. And so 3 weeks later, Bush had to ask Harriet Miers to pull back. That's how we got Samuel Alito on the Supreme Court. This, at least on the surface here, appears to be another Harriet Miers situation. You have Matt Gaetz being nominated for the top law enforcement office in the country. He's under active investigation. As you mentioned, folks on Capitol Hill said behind closed doors as they read the headline on their phones, audible gasps among Republicans. A majority of Republicans on Capitol Hill, we should say, don't like him, can't stand him. Until last year, Gaetz was under active investigation by the FBI, federal law enforcement, for sex trafficking minors. Now, they dropped that because they didn't believe they had enough there to convict him. But his relationship with a 17-year-old and a bunch of his conduct, as you mentioned, still being investigated internally by the House Ethics Committee on Capitol Hill. It's actually one of the reasons that he pushed out Kevin McCarthy as Speaker last year, is because McCarthy wouldn't get rid of the Ethics Committee investigation because they're taking that very seriously. They're very concerned about some of the details they're seeing. And so you might remember Matt Gaetz is leading that push against Kevin McCarthy, which didn't win him any favors. The joke on Capitol Hill right now is that while the Senate is the body that actually holds the hearings, has the meetings, confirms the president's nominees, it's telling that he probably couldn't even get a majority vote among his House Republican colleagues, not that the House has a role here. But it just shows you he's a firebrand here, not well liked, and again, under active investigation here. Now, that ethics investigation would go away because if he became Attorney General, he's no longer a member of the House. And they're looking into these allegations that he engaged in sexual misconduct, illicit drug use, accepted improper gifts, dispensed special privileges and favors to individuals with whom he had a personal relationship, all while seeking to obstruct government investigations into him. Now, he has denied wrongdoing, including ever having sex with a minor or paying for sex. But then you have Republican colleagues who say he used to be on the floor showing pictures of women that he used to have relationships with, and he was touting things like using ED meds along with energy drinks. Jill, these are things that have been said publicly by his Republican colleagues in interviews. Now, there's no question as to why the president-elect nominated him. He is a staunch loyalist of Donald Trump, willing to do anything for Donald Trump. Trump ally Steve Bannon said that this is like taking a blowtorch to the Justice Department, but it might be too much even for Trump allies. You had a number of senators. A reminder here, Republicans have 53 seats in the Senate, which means they can't lose more than 4 senators on any vote. Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, no fan of Trump, says this is not a serious nomination. Susan Collins of Maine, another Republican, is shocked, says she has many, many questions about this. And then you have Republicans, including a senator from North Dakota who's a staunch conservative, senator from Oklahoma, Markwayne Mullin. He was the one who was talking about what Gaetz used to do on the floor, showing pictures of women to his colleagues. He's no fan of him. Markwayne Mullin of Oklahoma is no moderate. He is extremely conservative. He has questions here. So the big question is, will he make it to a nomination hearing, or will this pick go away in the coming hours, days, weeks here? But this is a challenge by Donald Trump. He wants who he wants. He wants his cabinet the way he wants it, and he knows that he has Republicans on Capitol Hill, and they should approve everyone that he has. And so the question is, how willing is he to fight for Matt Gaetz? Or, if we're playing the 4D chess route here, Jill, is the Matt Gaetz choice, and again, I'm skeptical here, put out there to make any other controversial picks Donald Trump makes look relatively tame by comparison?
Okay, one that is definitely tame by comparison. Trump made it official and announced that he's going to nominate Senator Marco Rubio of Florida to be Secretary of State. In a statement, Trump said Rubio is a highly respected leader and a very powerful voice for freedom. Trump also called Rubio a strong advocate for our nation, a true friend to our allies, and a fearless warrior who will never back down to our allies. As we've mentioned, Rubio is seen as a much more mainstream pick. He is the son of Cuban immigrants. He is a senior member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. He is the top Republican on the selective Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. He did run against Donald Trump for president in 2016, but once Trump entered office, he did become an ally of him and endorsed him this time around.
Yeah, we can go back and play clips. We will spare you, but from the 2016 presidential fight, where Trump used to call him Little Marco and mock him repeatedly as they were running for president against one another. But like many others from that period on, they have since Ted Cruz, J.D. Vance, others. They've become extremely loyal to Donald Trump. But Jill, you have quite a contrast there, right? Marco Rubio has gone the traditional route of somebody who would become Secretary of State, has spent time on Capitol Hill, has spent time traveling abroad, talking to allies, dealing steeped in those issues for more than a decade there, versus a Matt Gaetz who has zero experience in the judiciary, zero experience in law enforcement, and has been nominated to be the top law enforcement official while under active investigation by the House Ethics Committee. So quite a contrast there. And so while some said, okay, I'm jiving with some of these picks, again, some Republicans saying, Gaetz a bridge too far. Now, Rubio, there was concern there that his name was floated, but Trump wasn't ready to pull the trigger on him for about 48 hours there. The official announcement, though, came despite the fact that there's a number of people in the Trump sort of MAGA wing who view Rubio skeptically, saying he didn't stand by the president on January 6th, that he had expressed criticism at times of Donald Trump. And so then you could say maybe the strategy here is to quiet those people. He's throwing them a bone in Matt Gaetz. Matt Gaetz doesn't actually get through, but at least, he's shown them like he can get through a Rubio because he threw some red meat to the base of his party with the Matt Gaetz pick. So think about it as you look at these picks, that there's a strategy here when it comes to who he wants and how to ensure that he's appeasing certain constituencies in the Republican Party. We should mention, if Rubio is confirmed, which looks likely, that leaves open a Senate seat, which means that Governor DeSantis in Florida will get a choice. In the majority of states, the way it works is if a Senate seat goes empty, the governor gets to appoint someone until the next election. Among those being pushed right now on Governor DeSantis as the next senator from Florida, Lara Trump, Eric Trump's wife, the co-chair of the RNC. There are a number of folks, including Elon Musk and his mother, who are tweeting at the Governor DeSantis saying, hey, you should put Lara Trump in there as the next senator from Florida. Now, there is talk that Governor DeSantis actually wants that seat for himself. His second term as governor is up in 2 years. And so we have seen in the past governors appoint their chief of staff or an advisor as a senator temporarily, hoping to then be able to run for that seat. So we, have to watch here whether DeSantis feels pressure from the Trump crowd to appoint Lara Trump or will effectively hold the seat for himself for a couple of years.
The plot thickens, Mo.
Jill, there's so much drama around this. I know some of you are like not steeped in or into like all the nitty gritty here of the politics, but it is fascinating, the game of chess and the game of dominoes that's being played here when it comes to these cabinet choices and the role of the Senate, the role of the governors, all of the above. By the way, in Ohio, they're going to have an open seat because J.D. Vance is becoming vice president. The governor there is a Republican. There was initial pressure from some parts of the Republican Party to appoint Vivek Ramaswamy as the senator, but now that Ramaswamy is on the Doge department with Elon Musk, it doesn't appear that we'll see Senator Ramaswamy anytime soon. But anyway, there's just really interesting triangulation happening.
Okay, another nomination to note, Trump tapped former Hawaii Representative Tulsi Gabbard to serve as his Director of National Intelligence. That is a position that oversees an agency that pretty much helps to coordinate among all the U.S. intelligence agencies. Trump said for over 2 decades, Tulsi has fought for our country and the freedoms of all Americans. As a former candidate for the Democrat presidential nomination, she has broad support in both parties. She is now a proud Republican. Moshe, this pick is a bit controversial. I mean, nothing compared to Matt Gaetz, but Gabbard is thought by some to be a bit too cozy with the Russians, amongst other criticisms.
Yeah, to put this in military terms, if DEFCON 1 is nuclear war, and so like the Matt Gaetz pick, the Republicans I've spoken to, is DEFCON 1. Like this is very much likely not to happen. Tulsi is more of a DEFCON 2 into DEFCON 3 situation, meaning there's a number of Republicans that are a little iffy on her. By the way, I should mention the defense secretary nomination we told you about yesterday, Pete Hegseth, also sort of up there as somebody who's a very non-traditional choice, and some would say unclear whether he's qualified enough to handle running the Pentagon. Tulsi Gabbard, the question here is more of her background. And so she could have an uphill fight when it comes to confirmation. Remember, she was a Democrat until just a few years ago. She ran for president as a Democrat in 2020. Now she has switched parties, become very critical. She's gone from Bernie Sanders supporter to Donald Trump supporter in a matter of a couple of years here. She left the party a couple of years ago, and she has been questioned as a potential asset here for Vladimir Putin and Bashar Assad. That's actually questions that are raised about her because of the types of information that she pushes forward. She effectively has blamed the U.S. and NATO for Russia's invasion of Ukraine, effectively borrowing from Putin's talking points. She also said that she wouldn't consider Bashar Assad, the dictator of Syria, an enemy. She met with him in 2017, very controversially, even after he was accused of using chemical weapons on his own citizens in the country's civil war. He's murdered hundreds of thousands of his own people, and she's kept a relatively close relationship with him. So those are among the questions she'll be getting there. Now, we should note, as Director of National Intelligence, she is coordinating all intelligence. She is coordinating the entire intelligence community. There's 18 intelligence agencies across the federal government, including, of course, most prominently the CIA. The Defense Department has one, the DIA, and across the board, the National Geospatial Agency, which handles satellite intelligence. For the most part, a lot of them handle their own business. They're pretty powerful in their own right, especially the CIA. So unclear how much power she'll have there, but she will have an opportunity to have sort of a direct report over these agencies, coordinating function. And so there'll be a lot of questions as far as what comes out about her in the coming days here. So the Tulsi Gabbard choice also could face some challenges on Capitol Hill. It'll be a question as to whether Republicans in the Senate feel like they can just knock out one in Matt Gaetz. Again, that's my feeling here in the first few hours, or they'll be okay knocking out a couple of Trump's choices. It'll certainly not make him very happy.
And it all comes as Donald Trump made his way back to Washington on Wednesday. Keeping with tradition, President Biden invited the president-elect, who also happened to be the previous president, back to the White House. They met in the Oval Office and spoke briefly before cameras before holding a private session. Here is a bit of what they had to say to the throng of reporters in the room.
Well, Mr. President-elect and former President, and Donald, congratulations. Thank you. And looking forward to having like we said, a smooth transition. Do everything we can to make sure you're accommodated, what you need. And we're going to get a chance to talk about some of that today. So
good.
Welcome
Thank
back.
You very much. And, thank you very much. And politics is tough, and it's in many cases not a very nice world, but it is a nice world today, and I appreciate it very much. A transition that's so smooth, it'll be as smooth as it can get, and I very much appreciate that, Jim.
You're welcome. Thank you all.
Moshe, sounds like the media had some questions there.
You think Trump and Biden sitting next to each other? The problem is in those situations, you have all the reporters shouting their questions at the same time. I imagine there were a lot of questions that Trump wanted to answer and Biden wanted to answer, but the two of them kept their mouth shut. And didn't create a scene there. And it was pretty notable that this meeting even happened, that Biden extended the invite after everything that's taken place, and that Trump accepted the invite.
Yeah, they then met privately for about 2 hours, which is longer than Trump spent with then President Obama in 2016. At the time, they met for about 90 minutes. The White House press secretary describes the meeting between Trump and Biden as substantive. They discussed everything.
That word substantive is probably doing a lot of work, Jill.
Yes. Apparently, they discussed everything from national security to disaster relief and even some foreign issues. But this does resume a tradition between the outgoing and incoming presidents that Trump decided not to continue in 2020. And noticeably not there, Trump's wife and former First Lady, Melania Trump, who did not take up First Lady Jill Biden on her invitation for a visit. Melania's office did release a statement saying, quote, her husband's return to the Oval Office to commence the transition process is encouraging, and she wishes him great success. Okay, so what can we read into that?
Jill, Melania's statements over the course of the past 2 years in the campaign have been intentionally vague about what she even imagines her role is going to be as First Lady, take two.
Yeah, there's been talk for a while that Melania Trump will not be playing a big role in the second term. Not that she played a huge role in the first term, but an even smaller role. And that she probably is not going to even be living at the White House full time.
Yeah, you might recall over on the Mo News Interview podcast, we had an interview with a reporter who just wrote a book about first ladies. And they interviewed several people who worked for Melania Trump. And they said that they used her main office as a wrapping room for gifts because she was so infrequently in the office and uninvolved in things there. So the question is, will she even geographically be located in Washington? What does she see her role? She's among first ladies that have not been that into the job.
As for the Veeps, it is unclear whether or not Vice President-elect J.D. Vance will meet with Vice President Kamala Harris, or if she has extended an invitation to him yet, as is tradition. But Moshe, back to the big Trump and Biden meeting. As we pointed out on the Instagram account, it is a welcome sight to see the two men shaking hands, meeting face to face, pledging that this is going to be a smooth transition after what has been a rocky relationship, to put it mildly. We did
the word rocky doing a lot of work there too, Jill.
Yes, substantive and rocky. We did put together compilations of some of the really nasty stuff that they have said about each other. And it did get some mixed reaction from the Mo News community.
So we did like a minute of like the nastiest things Trump said in the past few months, the nastiest things Biden said. We put them up on Instagram, and some people are like, thank you for the history and context. And some people are like, I didn't need to see that. That is very divisive. It's about uniting America. I'm like, well, the unity is going to last for several minutes or hours here. I'm somebody, and I think one of the things we do on this account over on Instagram, this podcast, the newsletter, is try to give you history and context. That, the meeting yesterday was all the more remarkable given that the two of them have been calling each other losers, the end of democracy, threats to democracy, the end of the country as we know it. Trump calling Biden the worst president in history, Biden calling Trump the worst president in history, Trump calling Biden the dumbest president, Biden calling Trump a rapist. Anyway, so on and so forth. You know what they said. So we did that just to give you a sense of like, oh my God, these guys can sit next to each other in a room in front of cameras without, actively fighting each other. So anyway, it does say a lot that Biden has brought back this tradition. And remember, this has effectively been the tradition for decades, where the new president invites the new president, where the current president invites the new president in for a meeting. Of course, as you mentioned, Trump discontinued that in 2020 because he still asserts that he won the election. And he made the transition very difficult in 2020. He wouldn't hand over things. And so the Biden team was having a difficult time transitioning things in November, December, and then early January of 2021 there. So Biden has brought this back. We'll see, of course, what happens in 4 years at the end of the last Trump term here. But just FYI here to all of you on Instagram, etc., is the point here is we're trying to ensure that you're getting the latest, but you're also getting some historical context as we report everything to you.
Moshe, I also think, to echo what Jonah Goldberg from the Dispatch had told you in one of the premium podcasts on the Interview podcast, both of these campaigns, the Trump campaign and the Biden campaign, and then the Harris campaign, were trying to paint a picture that it was going to literally be the end of the world if the other person was elected. And that is a strategy. It's a strategy to get undecided voters on their side. It's a strategy to get out the vote for maybe some people who are more apathetic about elections in general. And yet, even after all of that, they're able to sit down, meet. They seem to have a decent conversation. They spent 2 hours together. So it's just a reminder not to necessarily take everything that these candidates are saying about the other so seriously, because they're doing it with a political purpose in mind.
Yeah, it's a reminder that half the things they say, they don't actually believe, Jill. They didn't believe everything they were saying about the other. They're just trying to get you to vote for their side. So I think there were people legitimately on social media asking yesterday, well, you said this guy's the end of democracy and a fascist, but you're inviting him to the White House and inviting his wife over for tea. And so a reminder that they were trying to win an election here while they vehemently, are opposed to each other on a number of issues and have genuine concerns about what the other is doing, has done, will do to the country. they don't believe everything they tell you on the campaign trail.
Meanwhile, while Trump was in Washington, he met with House Leader Mike Johnson, throwing his support behind Johnson as Speaker in the next term. So Republicans have now hit the 218 members needed to retain control of Congress, which means there's 218 confirmed Republicans, 208 confirmed Democrats. There are still some races that are too close to call, which means we won't know what the final numbers will be. But we do know that Republicans, regardless, will still have a small margin of error when it comes to passing legislation.
Jill, super small. And now with the Matt Gaetz announcement, that's even one less seat. So think about it. They might only have a couple seat margin. And he's already nominated Mike Waltz of Florida, congressman from Florida. He's nominated Elise Stefanik, Republican congresswoman from New York. And then there's the Matt Gaetz pick. We'll see if that gets through. But if somehow that got through, that's 3 empty seats. Now, these are all safe Republican seats, which means after a special election in a few months in each of those districts, in all likelihood, unless something crazy happens, a Republican will be elected to those seats. But in the interim, that makes life very difficult, especially as Trump in the first 100 days is looking to pass a bunch of things. So it makes the job ever more difficult for Mike Johnson. We'll see how the mix ends up being in terms of how many seat majority he has. But there was talk that he was done after Waltz and Stefanik, and now he's picked a third member of that House caucus.
Okay, now let's head to the Senate, where Republicans elected South Dakota Senator John Thune to serve as Senate Majority Leader when the new Congress convenes in January. They'll have a 53-47 majority. He is replacing Senator Mitch McConnell of Kentucky, who led Senate Republicans for 17 years. That makes him the longest serving leader in Senate history. Moshe, we mentioned yesterday on the podcast, there were 3 top candidates. You had Senator Thune, Senator John Corbin of Texas, and Senator Rick Scott of Florida. They had all aligned themselves with Trump, but the MAGA pick was really going for Rick Scott of Florida. And some senators were privately telling reporters that they resented the pressure. Here is Thune, though, speaking after his selection, promising that he's going to help implement the Trump agenda.
We have a mandate from the American people, a mandate not only to clean up the mess left by the Biden-Harris-Schumer agenda, but also to deliver on President Trump's priorities. We will make sure that the president and his team have the tools and the support that they need to enforce border security laws and to remove the violent criminals who are wreaking havoc in every one of our states.
So Thune here, from the more traditional wing of the Republican Party, he came up, you could call him a protege of sorts of Mitch McConnell. He's watched McConnell's strategy as he's gotten through judicial nominees and, key legislation for Trump in the majority, as well as fighting the Democratic majority when the Democrats are in charge. So it is interesting that the outside pressure campaign effectively failed here by Trump's allies. He will have to deal with John Thune, who at times, by Republican standards has been critical of Donald Trump. And so, this is a case, too, where Thune's going to already have his hands full with some of these nominations like Gabbard, like Hegseth, and especially Matt Gaetz. They talked, Jill, about passing the reins here to a new generation. John Thune is 63 years old, but by Senate standards, 63 is young because McConnell's in his 80s. And so you have Thune here, who, by the way, didn't buy Trump's line in 2020 that the 2020 election was stolen. He called the pushback from Trump inexcusable, but he has effectively backed Trump here, and that'll be something to watch. The big test is Trump has said, as we told you recently on the podcast, he wants to be able to nominate his cabinet appointments via recess appointment, meaning the Senate goes on recess, goes on vacation, and then Trump can appoint whoever he wants. They've been somewhat amenable to that in their statements. Will John Thune do that? Will he basically say, you know what? Yeah, we'll take a vacation and let you pick who you want. Or will he stand up here? That'll be the first big test for John Thune and the Republican majority in terms of how do they see the Senate role and to what extent are they willing to challenge the new president.
Time for the speed read from the New York Times. A CIA official has been charged with disclosing classified documents that appeared to show Israel's plans to retaliate against Iran for a missile attack earlier this year. The official, Asif Rahman, was indicted last week in federal court in Virginia with 2 counts of willful retention and transmission of national defense information. He was arrested by the FBI on Tuesday in Cambodia and brought to federal court in Guam to face charges. The documents were prepared by the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, which analyzes images and information collected by U.S. spy satellites and then conducts work in support of military operations. Rahman was working abroad for the CIA. The information in the documents is highly classified and details interpretations of satellite imagery that shed light on a possible strike by Israel on Iran, and they began circulating last month on the Telegram app.
This was the big story we told you about several weeks ago, the concern within the U.S. government that there was a leaker on hand leaking these top secret documents about the Israeli war plans there. And it actually led to reports that Israel had to potentially slightly change their game plan in their attack against Iran because of what was leaked, what photos were leaked out there on the thread. Court documents say Rahman held a top secret security clearance with access to sensitive compartmentalized information, that is SCI, top secret SCI, which is one of the highest classes of top secret information, classified information in the U.S. government. It's typical for many CIA employees who handle classified materials. Now, the CIA is not officially commenting here. It was the FBI that did the arrest. So we'll learn more here in the coming days. They were able to identify this relatively quickly. Jill, we should note that there were some names who turned out not to be the leakers that were circulating on social media. So always beware, folks, before you reshare things to check them out. Actually, Fox News was among the media outlets that pushed back on that reporting of that name that was circulating a couple of weeks ago. And it turns out to be this guy, Asif Rahman.
While on the topic, we also want to mention that Jack Teixeira, the Massachusetts Air National Guardsman responsible for leaking hundreds of classified documents, was sentenced Tuesday to 15 years in prison. He pleaded guilty to 6 counts of willfully retaining and transmitting national defense information. In exchange for his plea in March, prosecutors agreed not to charge him with additional counts under the Espionage Act. Prosecutors argued that Teixeira, quote, perpetrated one of the most significant and consequential violations of the Espionage Act in American history. They asked the judge to impose the maximum sentence of more than 16 years. They said that Teixeira will be a cautionary tale for the men and women of the United States military and clearance holders in the government.
Jill, a reminder here, Jack Teixeira was that 22-year-old IT guy at Joint Base Cape Cod in Massachusetts that through being the IT guy gave him top secret security clearance so he could get onto people's computers. And so after using that clearance, he smuggled out images of classified documents, posted them on Discord, which is an online gaming and social media platform. He basically wanted to prove to the people in the gaming platform, yo, I know some stuff. This is what I'm seeing out there. He was basically using it for clout on a gaming platform. But the images he posted were top secret information, including government assessments of Russia's war in Ukraine, discussion of a plot to target American forces abroad, Chinese espionage efforts. He was arrested back in April of last year. And since they conducted the full investigation, they've ended up disciplining 15 people for a lack of supervision and a culture of complacency. There's a complaint in the government that way too many people have secret security clearances and they might need to perform that.
All right, some economic news. Inflation is a bit stickier than economists would like. From the Wall Street Journal, consumer prices edged up in October after having recorded the slowest rate of growth in 3.5 years in the previous month of September. It's a sign of how inflation continues to move lower on an uneven and bumpy path. The latest report likely not enough to derail another interest rate cut that's expected from the Federal Reserve when they meet next month. But perhaps it could mean slower rate cuts next year. So the Labor Department on Wednesday reported that consumer prices in October rose 2.6% from a year earlier, which is a pickup from the previous month. It's also higher than the Fed's target of about 2%. Core prices, which exclude food and energy in an effort to better reflect inflation's underlying trend, they were up even more, 3.3%. Economists do view some of Trump's proposed policies, like higher tariffs, as likely to push inflation higher. And that is because tariffs on goods coming in from overseas would likely be passed on to consumers, hence sending prices higher.
So this is the first inflation report that we're getting after the election, when many Americans, with their vote, reinforced the idea that inflation is too high, prices are too high here. Voters around the world in all the major 10 elections that major democracies have had this year have all punished the existing leadership and ruling parties for high prices and inflation. Remember, inflation was a global phenomenon here. More than 150 countries experienced it after COVID, because in many cases, most countries put money into the economy to prevent a recession. Part of that was inflationary. So even though inflation has been cooling here, Trump will enter office at a very delicate time here for the economy. The Fed has been looking to lower interest rates. That's expected to continue here, but they're monitoring inflation. If inflation starts to peak above 3, back up to 4%, they might have to pause on cutting interest rates, because as they lower interest rates, that makes it cheaper to borrow money, which puts more money in the economy, which raises prices. There's a whole effect there. So the translation here for all of you is that if inflation starts to keep creeping up, interest rates will stay exactly where they are. And if it keeps creeping up beyond that, interest rates will go up again. So that's something that we're going to continue to monitor month by month here.
And from CNN, they're all the rage in the office and at home. The global market for standing desks is booming, projected to reach $12.6 billion by 2032. They've been hailed as a simple fix for the health risks associated with sitting all day. However, some recent research suggests that standing might not be the health booster that many hoped for. A new study from Australia involving over 83,000 participants found that prolonged standing may not improve heart health and could even increase the risk of certain circulatory problems. In fact, spending too much time either sitting or standing was linked to a higher risk of problems like varicose veins and feeling dizzy or lightheaded when you stand up. Prolonged sitting has been associated with obesity, diabetes, and cardiovascular diseases. So in response, these standing desks emerged as this trendy solution, a way to reduce sitting time without drastically changing daily routines. Moshe, back when we were in an office, there'd always be like one or two people who had a standing desk.
Yeah, they were like the super cool, trendy people. In fact, I remember when it became like all the rage about 10 years ago, they're like, do you want a standing desk? And then eventually at CBS, as we built new newsrooms, we gave everyone the option of a standing desk with those, really cool little buttons. So, as you look down the row, someone standing, someone sitting, someone standing, someone sitting. And then a couple were doing the treadmill thing where they had the treadmill desks. So not only are they standing, but they're getting their steps in all day long.
It's a lot of, I don't know how you can concentrate, but good on them.
They were all competing in the office, like, oh, how many steps did you get in? 12,000, 14,000, 16,000. Anyway, I get it. There are times where I stand at my desk, even though I don't have a standing desk here where I record the podcast. So I try to kind of lift up my laptop because it helps, as you get into your 40s here and your lower back starts to hurt. It's not good to sit all day. It's not good to stand all day, I think is the bottom line. Moderation is key as you work at your desk, either again, even in a comfortable ergonomic chair or standing. Jill, back to the study before we go. We should note this is an observational study. The average age of the participants was 61 years old, which may limit how these results apply to youngins. And by youngins, I mean anyone under 61 years old.
So for the Senate, this would actually be youngins.
For the Senate, this is a relevant study because everyone there is 60 and above. But like over the House, where the average age is in your 50s or 40s, not relevant. They're way too young there in the U.S. House in their 50s.
Right. So if anyone from the Senate is listening, don't get standing desks for all the senators.
No.
Okay, from People, John Krasinski wasn't exactly sure what to think when he got word that he was being crowned People's 2024 Sexiest Man Alive. He tells the magazine, just immediate blackout, actually. Zero thoughts, other than maybe I'm being punked. He says he doesn't wake up thinking, is this the day I'll be asked to be the sexiest man alive? And yet it was the day you guys did it. You guys have really raised the bar for me. Moshe, think of previous sexiest men alive, Brad Pitt, George Clooney. I think both of them also said that they were shocked, but
Idris Elba.
I don't buy it.
Right. That less shocking. Jim Halpert. which is his character from The Office, becoming the sexiest man alive. I think more of a shocker here. And so apparently his wife also, Emily Blunt, is loving this. He says that Blunt was very excited when she heard the news, along with their daughters. And Jill, I think it was time for the world's sexiest man to be just kind of sort of a normal guy. I think the world was ready for that. We can't all compete with those chiseled guys with six packs. All right, we end here with On This Day in History. We begin in 1960. A 6-year-old named Ruby Bridges, you might know the name, began attending William Frantz Elementary School in New Orleans. She became the youngest of a group of African-American students to integrate schools in the American South. This was hugely controversial at the time, the federal government having to get involved in a number of states where they wouldn't allow this to happen. But on this day in history, a 6-year-old helps to integrate schools in the South. All right, on this day in 1969, I told you, you've heard about Apollo 11 in July of that year. Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin landing on the moon for the first time, walking on the moon for the first time, I should say. You've heard about Apollo 13. Houston, we have a problem. How about today in history? Apollo 12. It was the mission in between. It carried some astronauts you probably haven't heard of unless you're a huge NASA nerd, NASA historian nerd like I am, Charles Conrad, Richard Gordon, and Alan Bean. They would also go on to land on the moon, walk on the moon there. And it almost didn't happen. Apollo 12 had its own issues. It was struck twice by lightning. It caused a number of instrumentation problems, a little damage, a camera fried on it. So sort of the redheaded stepchild there of the Apollo missions. Apollo 12 on this day in history. A little congressional history for you on this day. In 2002, Nancy Pelosi became the first woman to be named leader of either party in either House of Congress. She, of course, would go on to lead the Democrats there for nearly 20 years in the U.S. House, through both years where they were the majority and the minority. On this day in 1988, a show that would inspire a young Moshe to go into journalism, Murphy Brown, starring Candice Bergen, premieres on this day 36 years ago on CBS. Jill, little piece of information for the Murphy Brown nerds out there. I didn't see myself in Murphy Brown, the main character. I saw myself as a young elementary school, middle schooler, as Miles Silverberg, who was the character on the show, who was like the Jewish executive producer of that show.
Fits the bill. Check.
They tried to revive the show decades later when I was at CBS, actually, and I got to meet the actor who plays Miles Silverberg, and I'm like, I just want you to know that I might have been the only 7-year-old inspired by your performance in the original show. I
remember that show. I think I probably was more inspired by Murphy Brown. Yeah,
that makes sense.
Which makes sense.
And we end here with a bit of music history. On this day in 1998, That Thing. Lauryn Hill reaches #1 with Doo Wop, That Thing, on the Billboard charts. And turning 21 years old today, he's got 99 problems, but ain't one. Jay-Z's Black Album premieres on this day. Encore, Dirt Off Your Shoulder. Bunch of the hits. It's been a Jay-Z, Beyonce themed week here, Jill, and we're not even done with the week.
It is Friday Eve, but we've got one more day. Yes, we have now mentioned them, I think, every day on this podcast, quite prominently.
We would like them to sponsor. They have a budget to sponsor us, but they are not a sponsor of this podcast. No.
Forget sponsor. Acknowledge.
Jeez, Queen Bee. We would. Well, actually, I don't know. We questioned a little bit. We were a little harsh on the Yale course, which some of you let us know about. You're like, guys, this is really important U.S. history. I love the podcast, but I don't appreciate your take on the Yale course. And I hear you. I hear you, everybody.
We discussed it in our editorial meeting again today, and I may have been persuaded to feel that. Good on Yale. Cool.
Good on Yale.
All right, guys. We did mention it is Friday Eve. So thank you for listening to the Mo News podcast. If you like what you hear, please share this with your friends. It will help us grow. Follow us and subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and throw us a review in the App Store.
I hope everyone has a good Thursday. It's going to be a wild ride in Washington. So stay with us if you want to keep up with everything that's happening there.
All right. Bye, everybody.